Welcome to the Cary Quashen Show, or the real deal, as I call it. I'm Veronica. I'm Cary Quashen, along here with Veronica Luna. How are you, Veronica?
I'm doing great.
It's so neat to be able to be here and do this podcast, especially with the signal, because as we were saying earlier, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and we're in the midst of another pandemic. And if we don't get the message out, this one's going to explode into a lot bigger monster than we already have.
Right.
Because as we know, before the coronavirus came, if you turned on the TV, what were they talking about? They were talking about the opioid epidemic. Remember that?
Right.
So every time you put on TV, it was opioids.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we stopped talking about this, and the coronavirus has all the headlines, which I understand. But the opioid epidemic, I now call a pandemic, is just gotten worse because more and more people are getting now lonely and anxiety and miserable. And what's going on is they're getting bad habits.
Yeah, depression has gone up, suicide rates have gone up, drug use, alcohol use, everything has gone up. The thing is that there's something out in the street that's very, very, very dangerous, and nobody is talking about it. Um, and it's scary.
It's really scary because right now we know that we're losing a minimum of 8 people an hour to accidental overdoses.
Right.
And that's not including the domestic violence and the driving under the influence and the robberies and the murders and the rapes. I mean, I can go on forever, but if you put it all in a bucket and you go to substance abuse, it's one of the biggest pandemics this country has ever had, or this world has ever had. But now there's another thing going on.
Right.
And it's kind of something that is just creeping up on our youngsters,
Yes.
and it's killing people, and not many people really are aware of it, even though we're starting to get national attention. It's becoming something that everyone needs to be paying attention to. And I want to read something really quickly,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there. This is my friend Jaime, and I mean that. He's my friend. I love him. He's one of my heroes. He's on a mission. I understand his mission. I just want to read a post that he did on Facebook that just gets me every freaking time. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I cry every single day. I miss my son so much that I fear that my grief will cripple me. Anybody who knows me knows how tight he and I were. I lost a part of me when he passed away. We'll stop there. Amy, what's going on?
How's it going?
It's going good, man. I mean, it's great to be able to be here. It's great to have you as one of our first guests. We'll be here at the Signal. We're trying to save lives, man, and I know you're on a mission.
Oh, I appreciate the invitation. I love being here. Anything I can do to help and anything I can do to get the message out there, you can count on me.
Reading this breaks my heart.
Oh, it breaks my heart too.
No,
You almost got me crying again.
I don't know how you do what you do and go on every day, but I do know that life's for the living and you're alive.
Well, a lot of people have asked me that, and I cannot blame the parents who try not to do anything about the situation at hand that is at our doorstep, not only here in Santa Clarita, in Los Angeles County, but it's a national problem. And there are others like myself, that wake up every morning, and I just feel like it's my mission now to try to get the word out there so that other parents do not have to go through the same living hell that myself, my wife, and Denise Johnson, Daniel's mom, are going through right now. So that's basically what I'm about. Not only that, but it's the old Marine in me too that just
pushes you.
That pushes me, and I don't know if it's a blessing or if it's a curse, but that's what keeps me going.
I'm reading some of these posts. I just went on my Facebook and printed some of these things that I get. I get so many different because I do this nationally, as you know, and and I'm on all these national organizations, so I see all this stuff, and there's just some I'm going to read. I'm so grateful. I am so great. I'm so grateful to have found this post. I too lost my son to a fake fentanyl pill. He died in his own bed at home 4/8/2020. We all need to stand together. I want to help fight this change. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Look at this. My son died pure fentanyl. I'm so sorry. My oldest probably did also. Has very little heroin in his system. She lost both her kids.
I know of one lady who lost five
Five of her own children.
of her own children.
Yes, my daughter wants to know how she can help get involved. She's going through so much with her 18-year-old daughter killed from fentanyl. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Here is an 18-year-old kid that we buried that was in our program. I mean, this turns my stomach. It makes me sick. Sad to hear a guy from IOP is no longer with us. Damn it, rest in peace. By the grace of God in this program, today I will celebrate 6 years. I mean, I printed some good stuff too. I mean, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't. And, as a mother, I have 3 kids, 20-year-old, 21, and 22. It's scary, because they're out in college, they're living their life, and, they think they might be experimenting, getting one thing, and it's actually fentanyl. Fentanyl is in everything now. Fentanyl is taking over everything, and the only thing I can do as a counselor is talk to my kids, talk to my clients. Like I said, all my clients are my kids. I'm Mama Bear.
Lost my son for 2020. He thought he bought heroin, but he had no other drugs in his system. Fentanyl killed him. I mean, it goes on and on. My daughter died 5/1/20, meth and fentanyl. She bought meth and was fentanyl. So young, so devastating. I'm not going to mention names, just turned 19, and it's unfortunate so many young people lost their lives. It's murder and needs justice.
Well, let's talk about that, right?
I lost my only child, Ryan, to a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. I miss him every moment of every day. It was a year ago today. These are people I know. I mean, Jaime, what are we going to do? I mean, I'm sorry, but I get a little choked up when I read this. So, April 6th. Take us to April 6th.
I try not to get choked up, but it happens every time.
How could it not?
Well, I mean, my son Daniel, he had, I believe he had substance use disorder, right? But he had been clean for quite some time. Had his life back together.
God, he was doing great.
He was doing great. He was learning how to code. COVID-19 hit. I don't want to blame it on COVID-19 because it has nothing to do with it, I think. Mm-mm. But part of it, though, is that, you keep these children in their homes. These kids are meant to socialize. They need to be out there with other kids, either, just be out in the street with them,
COVID-19 and this, with the lockdown. I mean, I get the fact that there needs to be a lockdown and we need to really try to curb that, but we're social animals, man.
No, we are social animals. And so April the 2nd, he said, Dad, I'm going to go walk the dog. I said, go for it. And he went and he walked Birdie and came back and he gave me I don't know what it was about that night, but it was just a very, very special evening with Daniel. I got a big hug and, he's not the kissing type, and he gave me a big old kiss on my cheek. And he goes, Daddy, you have no idea how much I love you. And thank you for putting up with me and everything that
Right.
I've put you through. And he didn't really put me through a lot, but
Yeah, he kind of did.
well, he kind of did. Well,
All kids do.
Yeah,
That's
all
what I'm
kids
saying.
do. Yeah, and April the 2nd, I think it was a Thursday. I walked into his bedroom to wake him up because he needed to take his medication, and I found him. He had already. It looked like he had already passed away. So it called 911. They came in and they were able to bring him back to life. He was taken to Henry Mayo. He had 3 seizures, and heart attack, and a team of doctors from Los Angeles Children's Hospital. I'm so grateful to.
16 years old.
16 years old, and they brought him back to life, but he was brain dead completely. And so on April the 5th, that evening, on Sunday, I talked to his mom, Denise, and both she and I were we came to the same agreement that this is no life for him. He would be appalled. And we made the decision to retrieve or take away all of his life support machines, and they disconnect him at 3:45 and on 5:08.
Take your time.
At 5:08 in the evening, he passed away. My only son. My only kid. My best friend. You know, we had. He was a straight A student up to 6th grade, and something in his head while he was going through puberty passed. Something happened. Something just clicked in his head. His grades started dropping. He wasn't using drugs though in 7th or 8th grade. I think he started dabbling maybe in 9th grade with marijuana. And that opened up a big door. I had him in summer school, and he was going to Canyon Country High School for his summer school, and one of the teachers there was a high school football coach of Canyon Country High. I mean, Daniel was a big kid, 6 foot, weighed 210 pounds. And Daniel had played flag football, like 2 or 3 seasons of it, and said if you want to play tackle, and he made a call to Saugus High School, see if they could put him on a team, and he joined, and he loved it. He loved playing football. Popular kid. He was already good looking as all heck.
I don't know where he got his looks.
Though he never used his good looks to further any kind of agenda or anything like that. In fact, he had more friends that were girls than more friends that were boys, because they all just loved coming up to him and talking to him, and he always had good advice for them and everything like that. But once football season was over, once 10th grade, the football season was over, it took, that's my boy.
I'm looking at your boy here.
Yeah.
And,
You can show it the cameras.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
mind.
what an incredible looking kid.
Yeah, he was something else,
It
man.
was just incredible.
Yeah, he was just incredible in all ways and shape and form. He was just a fantastic kid. You can ask his friends about him, and they just adored him. I mean, adored him.
We all did.
Yeah, we all did.
As
Um,
counselors, we did.
Yeah.
we loved your kid.
After 10th, the football season was over, things really took a bad turn. I mean, this kid started on with Xanax.
Right.
And that's when I first came in contact with your organization.
I remember.
And he had been suspended from Saugus High School about 4 times. And I guess the policy back then is like if you ever got caught smoking or using drugs or anything on the high school campuses, you had to go to
A different one. Oh, to Tide, right.
Tide, right?
Right.
On Tuesday nights. And
Mhm.
and he liked it and everything like that. And I was just trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. I was, when you're a father or a parent, nobody gives you a manual on how to be a parent, right? And he was living with me, and I told him, hey, man, if you're going to continue this behavior and you want to, smoke pot and things like that, you're going to have to go live with your mom. And he goes, all right, later.
Why'd you say that?
Well, because I myself, I I suffered also from substance abuse disorder, and I drank a lot. And but I got clean and sober on April 13th of 2005. Daniel was about a year and a half old, and at that time I was trying to build a business, but I was already, my mother passed away due to alcoholism, unfortunately, when she was 45 years old.
Right.
And
How sad.
yeah, very sad. It runs in my family.
I lost
time.
my dad. He was 47.
Yeah.
Substance abuse.
My family has a lot of mental health issues in my family, and so Daniel was a year and a half old, and that was in a bad way, and also contemplating probably suicide at the time. And what do I do? Do I take my own life, or do I become a father to this kid? And and I prayed a lot, and and I said, you know what, I'm going to stay alive for this kid. I'm going to break the chains of our past and our history, and I'm going to be around for this kid because I want to be the best father in the world.
And what a great father you were.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean it. It's
I know you
nothing
do.
to be appreciated. It's a fact.
I appreciate that. I know you do. I know you mean it from your heart.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have said that, and I did the best that I could with the tools at hand.
You surely did. I'm thinking back, and I can't think of anything else that you could have done.
Right.
And and this is to all parents out there. If your kid's in trouble, you got to get to a point where if anything happens, you can go to bed at night saying, I did everything.
Right.
Because we're always going to say, if I would have done different, better, or more. But from an outsider, you
Right.
couldn't have done anything different, better, or more.
Thank you. I did the best that I could. When I saw that this was happening and he went to go live with his mom, I missed him like crazy.
Of course.
His mom is a wonderful person, a loving, compassionate woman, has a very demanding job, and she works in the mental health industry as well. And I won't get into details, but she did the best that she could with him too. But he just went off the rails over there, and it got to a point where it was just out of control. So she and I came up with a plan, and unfortunately, in the state of California, you don't have much say when it comes to your kid.
Right.
Right? You don't have much say. If I wanted to see a urine analysis,
Mhm.
he had to give me permission to see if I can get that urine analysis or not. So I
Right,
didn't
right.
know what he was using. I didn't know if he was using marijuana or if he was on ecstasy or what the heck he was taking.
You just knew something was not right.
I knew definitely something was not right.
Right.
And it was bad, and I just felt like I had to do, myself and Denise felt like we had to do something to save him, and I couldn't have him committed in California because I was told that he would have to want to be committed himself. Or in other words, he would have to want to agree to stay somewhere. There were no laws whatsoever that could have kept him in a rehab.
The only thing you can do in the state of California against somebody's will is if they're put on a 5150 or a psychiatric hold because they're suicidal, homicidal, or gravely disabled. Your kid was neither.
He wasn't either, and he wasn't even close to it. So after doing a lot of research, I came across an organization, Wingate Wilderness Therapy in Kanab, Utah, where it was basically a 2-month program where both young minors and adults can go, but they split them up in groups, boys in one group, girls in another. It's in beautiful, near Zion National Park, beautiful setting. And they get there and they take away their phone and they strip you down, take a shower. Here are your clothes. Here's your backpack. Here's your sleeping bag. Here's a plastic tarp. Here's your flint. No, they didn't even give them a flint. Now that I come to think of it.
Right.
No flint. They taught them how to start your own fires, like rubbing sticks together, and the ingredients to your food, and what they had to do every day.
I should send my counselors there.
No.
Well, they had every day. They had to hike between 5 to 10 miles a day to get to their campsite, And if they didn't get to their campsite, they called it crash camping, and they wouldn't get all the provisions that they needed. So
Right.
they were always on a mission. But what that did for Daniel, it helped him so much. I mean, because first of all, you took away all the social media, you take away the phones, you take away everything like that. There's no television, there's no Snapchat, there's no Instagram. None of that's around.
Mm-hmm.
He learned how to depend upon himself to survive, and he found out that he could.
Right.
And he was away from all the social noise, so he learned a lot more about himself than he could ever do.
Right.
And it was a giant sacrifice, financially wise,
Mm-hmm.
on my behalf. It was really expensive, but it was so well worth it. I was able to visit him 6 weeks in, and when I saw him when we first saw each other, I'm sorry.
Don't be. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite the reunion because I got to camp out with them. I got to spend the night with
Oh,
them.
cool.
He goes, Dad, I got to start a fire. He goes, need help? No, Dad, I got this. It's on me.
You wouldn't have known what to do.
I wouldn't have known what to
No.
do. All my old Marine Corps skills, I
So
don't.
the Daniel taught the Marine.
Yeah. So here he is. He's lighting his own fire. He made me. He made dinner that night. He made dessert. He was just, and we talked, and we at length. And I loved it because when he got out of there, both he and our relationship changed to something that I could never had foreseen before in the past. Because before, when I said that, I'll go back a little bit when I talk about being a parent and nobody gives you a manual on how to
Right.
how to raise a kid. We always talking about, you got to do this, you got to do that, and not really taking into account what the kid's feeling or what he's doing or what's going through his head.
Right.
So we were able to reboot our relationship, and it flourished like never before. And I'm not saying that we were best friends. We were best friends and more so, but we still kept that father-son relationship.
Right.
Um,
You were his dad.
I was his
He
dad.
was your son.
Yeah, and he was my son. The only real activity that he loved doing with me is going to the shooting range. He loved shooting. He was a great shot. He
Right.
loved it. So we did that as much as we could. But he loved gaming and all that stuff. And I pulled him. I'm not sure. I forgot if I pulled him out of Saugus High School or we put him in OFL. He was a whole year behind on his schoolwork. Actually, I think it was a little bit more, like 14 months behind in the schoolwork. So it was insurmountable, and he was very stressed about it. And he said, you know what, man, take it easy. And you just do it on your own.
Right.
And he caught up. He caught up to his grade. And this year, what he was planning on doing was he would have graduated this year. His counselors at Saugus High School said that, as long as he caught up, that, and he did all of his elective and everything else, that he would have been able to return and graduate on stage with his class. And that's what he was striving for. And I was so proud of him. I mean, the kid was doing great.
Yeah.
And something happened on August 2nd. Somebody gave him something, or I don't know where he had it or how he got it, but all I can tell you is that on that Thursday morning of April the 2nd, I walked into his room and I immediately knew that my son was gone. And
I can't imagine.
it's
No, I can't. I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
It's and what was more, there's nothing more heartbreaking than losing your only child. But I don't know if this will make any sense or not, but to know that he was on the right path again,
Yes.
and that he was doing everything that he was doing,
Mm-hmm.
staying sober,
Right,
staying
right.
straight,
And he was sober for
He
a
was
while.
sober.
He was doing great.
He was doing great. From time to time, he would jump in an IOP because he wanted to go see his old friends and check
That's right.
on them and see how they were doing. But that morning I found him, and I knew right away that he had passed on. Even though Santa Clarita's fire EMTs and the fire department, just I have nothing. I've never had the chance to thank them for their professionalism and their love and their caring and bringing my kid back and everything like that. But that night at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, a group of these expert doctors that all they do is deal with teenagers and kids
Right.
with traumatic brain injuries and things like that. And Mr. Puerta, I'm just sorry, we can't. There's no way sugarcoating it. They had us in this room for about an hour and a half, and it went point by point by point by point, and told us what happened. And
God, that must have been hard.
it was really hard. And
Yeah.
so at that point you're just like shocked, and he goes, okay, so what do I do here? And that night I came home. I needed to rest, but I didn't sleep that night. Denise stayed with Daniel, and we just the next 4 days between Thursday night and that next Monday evening, we just stayed with him and
Made your peace with him.
so heartbreaking.
You had pictures all over the hospital. Remember you told me that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want him to be just like another statistic at the hospital,
Yeah.
So his mother came up with a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Hey, would you mind posting, printing some pictures of him so the hospital staff can see who our Daniel was?
Yeah.
And so I printed a lot of his pictures, and I posted it all over his room, and I posted it outside, and everybody that would walk by and see him, they go, oh my God, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
And I didn't know how this was possible. I was just like, what is going on here? I just felt like it was in a very bad dream. But every morning that I woke up next to him and seeing him in that bed with all him intubated and seeing all these things on him, I just knew that, I had to say goodbye to my boy, and that's what we did. We said goodbye to him. We stroked his head and put the hair to his side, held his hand. They unplugged him, and we were there. Myself, Denise, his mother, his grandmother, and his aunt Diane, and his grandmother Mary were there. We were with him when he took his last breath, and he was gone. Picked up all the pictures, took them off the walls, got in my car, and came home.
A drive you'll never forget.
Well, they wanted to drive me home, and I didn't want to let anybody drive me home. There was a lot of people worried about me, and a lot of people worried about my own mental health and what I might do. And being that, I had substance use things in the past and drinking issues. But I knew for a fact that I was never going to use again or drink again. I mean, I know. He's watching me, and I'm
He's
sorry
watching
for all
you.
the sniffles.
Oh, are you kidding?
But, I mean, a lot of people thought that I have not gone to an AA meeting in years because I'm that guy, I'm the stubborn type that I know that I could do it on my own. And not belittling AA or NA. I understand the whole philosophy about it and everything like that. I personally never really did it because my first priority was building a business so I could raise my son and get out of the hood,
Which you did.
Yeah, I was not living in a very nice part of Sherman Oaks. He was living with his mom, but I wanted him to have a nice life in a nice neighborhood, and I saved and I worked hard and I bought a nice home here in Santa Clarita in Saugus, and this is what he was brought up. But since this has happened, of course, the first 2 weeks after his death was an absolute like shock.
I was going to say I could imagine, but no, I don't think I could.
We're not supposed to bury our kids.
No.
You're not supposed to bury our kids. They're supposed to bury us.
Yeah.
Every parent this is every parent's worst nightmare happen.
Of course it is.
There were days that I couldn't get out of bed, and and you know, it was an outpouring of love from the from Santa Clarita, from Saugus High School, his friends from Saugus High School, the parents from Saugus High School. I could mention a lot, you know, Carmen Asensio, Yvonne Vestward. I mean, there's so many people that, you know, send flowers and fruit baskets and everything else. And my neighbor from in front, Alicia, would cook for us every day. And Todd and Mona, I mean, everybody was just supportive. But I was upset. I went from being completely devastated and heartbroken to asking questions. And I started asking questions. Well, I'm not going to get much into the details of any kind of investigations that are going on, but it had been determined because I found half a pill on top of Daniel's dresser. It was a light blue pill. You could see the sketchings or something like like an M and a 30, and I thought that he had taken half a pill of oxycodone, 30 milligrams. And I said, well, if you take half a pill.
Well, that's what it looked like, didn't it?
Yeah, it looked exactly like it. And I said, well, how do you die from half a pill of oxycodone? And then like 2 or 3 weeks after Daniel had passed, I had been told by the authorities that had, you know, I had provided them with half that pill, and they came back to me and they said that it was basically enough fentanyl to kill anywhere between 5 to 10 grown men.
Wow.
So it was not an oxycodone.
No, it was not an oxycodone. It wasn't an oxycodone. And when I found out that it was fentanyl, I said, well, what the hell is fentanyl?
So he thought he was taking an oxy.
He thought he was taking an oxycodone, and basically what he had taken was pure fentanyl, and it killed him. The first thing that fentanyl will affect is your respiratory system.
Right.
Well, the first thing that you feel is euphoria.
Of course, because it's 50 to 100 times stronger than any other opioid.
It is 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin.
Correct.
And if you talk about carfentanil, it's 1,000 times higher. And when we're talking about the strength of fentanyl, through my research and what I have learned since I've been on this journey now for 6 months, is that all it takes basically is 3 to 5 micrograms to kill you, which is the equivalent of 5 to 6 grains of salt.
Wow.
And when bootleggers, what people need to understand, and this we're going to get to what you're doing. What people need to understand is, I'm going to say 50%. It's higher. 50% of all street drugs right now aren't what you think they are.
No, they're not.
I was talking to one of the patients that we have that says, I overdosed and found out it was fentanyl, but I trusted my dealer. Here's what I want to say is, not even the dealers know always what they're getting now. There's people making these pills. They look real. They feel real. But the reality is they're cut with fentanyl, and if it's cut too much, if it's mixed wrong, you die. So when we're playing with the stuff on the streets, especially now, we're playing Russian roulette. Half a freaking pill took Daniel's life.
What I would like to really, I want people to understand the following. You know, I'm 58 years old. And had fentanyl been around back in the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s, I mean, fentanyl is used in a hospital setting. And that, from what I understand, it is used to treat people who are under, last leg of cancer treatments or horrific traumatic injuries that are so painful that could actually take your life, because your body just cannot control that.
The pain, right.
Can't handle that kind of pain. So in a hospital setting, to give you fentanyl, right?
Correct.
But now, like I said before, if this stuff was around, I would say 3/4 of the class of 1980 from my high school, Burbank High School, we would all be underground. This is no joke. This is everywhere. All right. So, and I'm going to get to a little bit more about that in a minute. But talking about this fentanyl and what it's done, when I found out that it was fentanyl, I started doing my research, and then I started coming across these groups on Facebook, dozens upon dozens upon dozens of them, where people were passing away due to fentanyl poisoning. And I didn't understand that. Now, there's a lot of different angles to look at this. We can look at the side of substance abuse disorder, where there are people who have substance abuse disorder,
Right.
who are using drugs and are passing away. I mean, I'm talking about people who are actually shooting heroin, but instead of getting heroin,
Yeah.
right, are shooting up pure fentanyl and it takes their life, right? That's one thing. But what I'm talking about right now is the one pill, one kill
Yes.
segment of society, of our children, because a lot of the children who are now 12, 13, 14 years old that are going into the junior high schools and the high schools, who they're all curious. Every single one of them is curious. Tell me who is not curious about taking drugs.
Well, especially today, because kids are now in today's society, children are connected to their friends more than their parents in most cases,
Right.
because of telephones and Snapchat and Instagrams and
And
Facebooks
Facebook.
and all that stuff. So parents are spending 2 to 10 minutes with kids. They're way more focused with their friends, which becomes more important. So they're taking risks today that they normally wouldn't take.
That's correct. And so, back in my day, we didn't have all these social platforms. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of that, right? So you go to a friend's house, smoke some pot,
Right.
Get hungry and
Yeah.
go chow down
Have
to
your
Jack in the
munchies.
Box, get the
Right.
munchies, then go home and you go to sleep and you wake up the
It's
next
all
day.
it's all about a breakfast
Yeah,
jack.
exactly. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
But this generation of children is a completely different animal, because this generation of children, if they're suffering, if the kid is not concentrating at school,
Yeah.
They
Right.
want to give them a pill.
they're not concentrating at school, they're a little bit hyperactive or something like that. We have a whole generation of children being brought up on all these we got them on Xanax, we got them on Ritalin, we had them on
Yeah.
Demerol. What else did we have them on?
All kinds of
Adderall.
So I'm gonna focus you in a different direction real quickly, because I follow your Facebook posts.
Okay.
You're my friend.
Yeah.
And on your Facebook posts, with some of the stuff you've done, there's hundreds of people that are commenting. And what I'm seeing is hundreds of parents that have found their kids dead in the bedrooms in the morning.
The statistics.
These are not drug addict kids.
No, they're not drug addict kids. My son wasn't a drug
I
addict.
was just going to say, your son was not a drug addict.
My son is not what you would call a drug addict. Was
No.
he experimenting? Yeah. Did he have kind of substance abuse disorder? At that time, no, he didn't, because he was completely clean and sober for over a
Right.
year. And he wasn't struggling. He wasn't going to meetings. He wasn't doing any of that stuff.
So these are kids that are going out, deciding maybe I'll experiment, maybe I'll play, taking something and losing their lives, thinking they're taking something that they're not. That's like murder, isn't it?
It is murder. It's called, it is what I like to call, and what others are calling, is called drug-induced homicide. And unfortunately, the statistics are one pill, one kill. 3 out of 4 children who die due to fentanyl poisonings are found in their beds
By their parents.
by their parents in the morning. 3 out of 4 children.
We're
So-
talking children.
We're talking about
Babies.
children. We're talking about children of 12, 13, 14 years old. That's a different segment of society, because everybody or the authorities like to lump them all together. And unfortunately, this is where I come in, and other people are coming in, partners of mine that are advocating for change, is the authorities are lumping all these children in with, oh, it's just your drug addict, and I'm sorry, and they had an overdose and they're dead, and there's no investigation done.
And that's not the truth.
And that is
No,
not
it's
the
not, because we went through an experimental phase in our lives, and but the world has changed again.
But it's
Yeah.
so not the truth, because you know what? They're going out and saying, well, I'll try cocaine, or I'll take a Xanax, or I'll do an Oxy. That's not what they're getting.
No,
That's not what they're getting. So, like I said before, this generation of children who are brought up on Adderall and Ritalin and Xanax and everything like that, when they go to parties, you know, here in Valencia, from what I understand, they were having pill parties where you pay $20 in a little cup. They give you a couple pills, and you go inside and you pop those pills, and supposedly you have fun.
There's not a party where teenagers are. I mean, that are playing around with drugs that aren't serious drugs.
Correct, and so they
And that's everywhere, not just here. It's not
only here in
everywhere.
Santa Clarita, but
it's throughout the country.
It's throughout the country. So it's a huge problem. And what's happening is that the people who are furnishing our children with these counterfeit opioids are getting away with murder.
Period.
It's as easy as that. And I'll go as far as to say, even people who suffer from substance abuse disorder, who smoke meth or do meth and it's cut with fentanyl, or they're shooting up heroin and it's not heroin, it's fentanyl, I would call those victims of drug-induced homicide as well.
They're being murdered. They're being murdered because they don't know that it's like buying an aspirin and getting OxyContin. You don't know what you're doing.
Well,
Exactly.
let me give you an example, and I think
That was a bad example, but you know what
I'll
I mean.
give you a better example.
I bet you will.
You're a little maybe in my age.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Right.
Do you remember? Do you remember 1982? What happened with the national recall of Tylenol?
I do.
What happened?
Wow.
Do you remember?
Tell us. Well, yes, I do.
Or
But tell
do
us.
you know about this? No. Okay.
I was little.
You were very little. In 1982, she's a baby.
I'm 40.
In 1982, well, anybody who grew up who knows about this, or an adult back in the 80s, would understand and remember this. In 1982, in the city of Chicago, 7 people passed away because they took a Tylenol pill
That was tainted.
that was tainted with cyanide.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
There was a national
I
recall
remember.
where every single jar or bottle of Tylenol was taken off
It's true.
The shelf.
the shelves because 7 people had passed away due to cyanide.
Yeah.
Well, this is exactly the same thing. If you, like what happened to my son took half of what he thought was 30 milligrams of oxycodone, and it killed him. And 7 people in the city of Chicago went and bought themselves Tylenol to take care of a headache,
And died.
and they died because those 7 pills were tainted with cyanide. This is exactly the same thing.
Now, what's the difference?
There is no difference.
Exactly.
There is no difference. So people who are in that mindset that only children who are using drugs,
Or drug addicted.
or are drug addicted are dying. Well, I'm sorry. I have a news flash for you. This kid, this 16-year-old boy, my son, was not a drug addict.
No.
And now all I have is a box of ashes in my living room. That's all I have.
And your necklace.
And my necklace with his fingerprint that I rub every day for me to get the strength that I need to get accomplished what I need to get accomplished. So if you're parents out there, if you think that you're immune to this, I'm sorry, but you're very mistaken. You need to talk to your children about these one pill, one kill drugs. Now I'm going to go so far as
all these are people that died thinking they were taking something that they weren't taking.
And I'm going to go so far as saying this, and you, both of you as experts in this field, I would say that probably in maybe 3 to 5 years, there aren't going to be any addicts left because fentanyl will have killed them all. And the only people that you're going to have dying are the cases of, like my Daniel, of people taking that one pill, one kill. That's what it's coming to. China, okay, the Chinese gangs are selling this fentanyl to the Mexican cartels,
Which are mixing it up and bootlegging pills.
They're not even mixing it up. A lot of people think that these pills are just tainted with fentanyl, and they're not. They're garbage. It's sugar, pressed sugar with fentanyl, and they're not
Exactly.
in the business of composing or making these pills.
They're not.
And-
They're not chemists.
They're not chemists, and 30 to 40% of the batches that are coming up from the border are lethal doses of fentanyl. Period.
It's almost like terrorism.
And that's what I'm going to get to. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. And that's what I've been working on. I'll try to condense this a little bit more. There's a lot of things that need to be done about this, first and foremost. And my number one goal now is to make people aware, and parents, especially, of course, parents with children, that they are not immune to this. Your kid does not have to be a drug addict. Doesn't have to be somebody who's suffering from substance abuse disorder. None of that.
Yeah.
It could be a kid who just wants to experiment with drugs, and he goes to a party, and they call them, what these kids call them, Xanax bars,
Candy bars.
candy bars or whatever, and he takes a little candy,
bars,
and the next
candy bars, right?
candy bars, whatever, and next morning, you go into your room and you find your dead son or your dead daughter, and then you try to figure that out. And then you get a coroner's report that says, well,
They don't believe him here.
the drug
I have-
toxicity.
I have.
Yeah, exactly.
It's here.
There's piles of it. So
This
what
is from my Facebook.
that's from your Facebook. Yeah. You should see my Facebook.
Like, yeah, I saw it.
You should see my Facebook.
I see your post. I see. what's
And
going
I've
on.
made my Facebook page absolutely public,
I know.
so that anybody who wants to go on there can go on there and see what's happening. The first thing that I did was John and Ken show, KFI AM 640, bringing awareness to it. And then since then, I know a story was done in the Signal, and I've garnered some media attention, and I've partnered up with some other groups. But let me get to what I wanted to say. Here in the state of California, district attorneys do not have the proper tools of how to prosecute these cases. Again, these children, I call them one kill, one pill children. The ones that are falling through the cracks are just being lumped in from those common everyday overdoses of drug addicts and things like that. And that can't happen, because what's happening is these drug dealers are getting away with murder.
Right.
There are 25 states in the American Union that have drug-induced homicide laws. Because what we have right now
What's that mean?
drug-induced homicide, if I have to bring it up so I could read it to you, because I'm not too good with my, but I'll read it to you what exactly that means. Drug-induced homicide is a person commits drug-induced homicide when he or she unlawfully delivers a controlled substance to another, and any person's death is caused by the injection, inhalation, absorption, or ingestion of any amount of that controlled substance.
So if you're dealing drugs and somebody dies, you're responsible.
If you are dealing drugs and somebody dies because of what you gave that person, then you are culpable of drug-induced homicide.
Sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Well, unfortunately, and I don't want to get political about it, I really
No.
don't, but sometimes it's really hard not to, because it's an ideological and a philosophical bent that goes against the grain of this, right? Because what we're talking about is, well, these drug dealers had a rough life, they were brought up in the hood, they have no way out of the hood, and they had no other way of making a living, so they're dealing drugs, or they themselves are addicts themselves, and they need to sell drugs so they can make a living and continue using their drugs on their own.
Right.
What do? Do we just let this go unpunished? Do I get no justice for my dead son? There are 25 states in the American Union that have drug-induced homicide laws on the books. Probably the harshest, the most severe, is Oklahoma, which is a life sentence without no parole in the state prison. The least harshest is the state of Colorado, where they will only prosecute you for drug-induced homicide if a minor passes away due to you furnishing that child or something like that. So since this has happened, you know, in my advocacy, I've been writing letters and I've been talking to a lot of people. I'm making phone calls. I'm that stubborn guy. I'm that little gnat that's in your ear. That's just my
No,
nature.
I've been to a couple of the meetings with you.
Yeah.
And you're
And
making.
as you should, it's your baby, your son. You need to understand. You need to advocate for others. You know, you don't have to. We don't have to be in your shoes.
I couldn't save my son, but if I could save somebody else's child, then it will all have been worth
I
it.
got news for you.
So
You've already saved people.
I don't know.
Now, I do know, because I speak to the people that listen to you speak. You save lives. Like it or not, believe me or not, you save lives. You don't know that because they're alive. But your talk, your pain, saved lives already.
I thank you.
I thank you.
So I've sat down, I've written letters, and I've called offices from both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat.
Mhm.
The first meeting that I had was with the legislative director or the healthcare policy expert of Chrissy Smith, and she promised that she was going to get me a meeting with Christy, and that never happened. I reached out to Scott Wilkes' office, and he immediately wanted to see me, and I met with him.
We
and
met.
sat
I was
down.
with you.
You were with me when I told you to come to the meeting with me, and he
Yes.
came and talked to me. And we also sat down with State Senator Melissa Melendez out of Temecula and Murrieta. She sat down with us, who's actually heading this fight for us. And I also
What is the fight?
and also sat down with Congressman Mike Garcia.
Yeah.
And he took an hour and a half out of his very busy schedule in an election year to sit down with us to talk with us. So what is my fight? I want to get drug-induced homicide. There's two fights, actually. There's one on the state level, and there was one on the federal level.
Right.
On the state level, I want drug-induced homicide laws to be introduced in the state legislature. But being the way the makeup of the legislator is right now, I've been told that drug-induced homicide will never, ever be passed in the state of California due to the fact that, again, political bents and philosophies and ideologies. That's fine.
Oh, first of all, I believe that's true, but I don't believe it's true. I think we're going to pass that one day. We're going to have to.
Well, the newest thing is, well, we've already had lawyers, attorneys looking at this. Actually, the district attorney of Riverside is looking at this and bringing up the law, but we're going to try to get that. But what we were looking at too is there's something, and I have to give credit because this wasn't my idea. I have to give credit to Matt Capilotto, who heads the California Drug-Induced Homicide. He came up with a brilliant idea, and it's called the Watson Law.
Mhm.
Do you know what the Watson Law is?
You've already told me. Go
I
ahead.
don't.
Tell her.
So the Watson Law is if you're caught in the state of California first time and they catch you for a DUI, before you're let out of jail, you have to sign
Waiver.
a waiver stating that if you should ever be caught again driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol and you cause the loss of life of somebody, then you're going to be charged with
Right.
first-degree murder.
Yes.
Okay.
We deal with it all the time.
Yes.
With first-degree murders.
Mhm.
So Matt's idea, which I thought was brilliant, and I don't see how anybody cannot get behind this type of legislation, but a Watson Law to drug dealers. So if you're caught peddling drugs, if you're a drug trafficker and you're selling drugs and you're caught, you have to sign the same waiver where if you're caught a second time and they can prove that you caused the death of a child or an adult, then you will be prosecuted to the full degree of first-degree murder.
I don't see how that can't be.
So I don't see how
That's
that can be.
perfect.
That is perfect because
Right.
it satisfies everybody. You're giving a break to the drug dealer, whatever that person's condition or
Right.
socioeconomic status may be. I don't know. But if we can do it for drunk driving, why can't we do it also for drugs? So there's
That
that.
is true.
Yeah.
That is
And on the
true.
federal level, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but this is just the way it is. On the federal level, whoever is in power, either it be Joe Biden or President Donald Trump, needs to deem fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction.
I agree.
Fentanyl,
It is actually.
It is.
If-
It's killing so many people.
Yeah.
the CDC's numbers are not accurate.
Right.
because unfortunately our county coroners do not, in many ways, quantify the amount of people who are passing away due to fentanyl in LA County or in the rest of the nation.
Yeah. And they're also a
And-
couple years behind.
And they're a couple years behind. Like the latest numbers that I could get, I believe, just came out, by the way. 2020 numbers
I
just
know.
came out. But our numbers that I've talked with other people who are in the same fight as me, now fentanyl came into play in the year 2013. That's when it first started being introduced into the
Right.
United States, and it's come through the mail system. Then they started selling it to the Mexican cartels, and they started pressing pills. Donald Trump came down on them, said this is a felony, you cannot send this. So what did the Chinese do? They stopped making the fentanyl, but they still do the precursor
Right.
of fentanyl. They sell it to the Mexican cartels, and they just finished making fentanyl, and they're making it now, as well as the India is now making fentanyl. They're now in the game too, and they understand there's a huge opioid crisis in the United States. And when the federal government came down on all these pain management doctors and these pill mills that were just like giving this stuff away like oxycodone, Percocet, OxyContin, Vicodin, and they were giving it away like candy, the U.S. government saw that they were causing so much addiction that the
Right.
DEA came down and said, well, you can't do that anymore,
Right.
right? You can only give a week's worth of this stuff.
Yeah.
So they saw that and they said, okay, well, we're going to make it available. So how do they make it available?
They bootleg them.
They bootleg them. They're making counterfeit pills. And then how are they selling it? They're selling it through,
Yeah, of course.
So bad.
Yeah, but
they're selling it. I'll say it. I don't care. They
Say
can
it.
come after me.
No, they're selling it through the
There's-
social media.
There's
How's that?
social media platforms. And I'll just say this.
Yeah.
The most popular social media platform of children, which is what?
All right.
It's Snapchat.
Mhm.
It's Snapchat.
Yeah.
Because everything on Snapchat disappears. It is killed.
And the scary part is we only got a couple more minutes left, but the scary part is they used to give prescriptions for Oxy and Vicodin and all those pills, 90 pills, 3 refills. They don't do that anymore.
No,
So the
they
peop-
take that away from
Right.
them.
So now the people that have to have more are hitting the streets, buying things that they think are real and that are not.
and they're not. They're counterfeit pills
Right.
that are coming up to the border. And our estimates is from 2013 to 2020, people under the age of 25 years old, 602,000. 602,000. Now, you grab those 602,000, and I've said this before. If you were to commit a mass murder with weapons, guns, what do you think the government would do? We would lose our Second Amendment. We would lose all our guns. They would never tolerate it. But again, I go back to the fact that our authorities are lumping these one pill, one killed children
Right. Into overdoses.
into overdoses, lumping them in with everybody else, and nothing is being done about it. And that needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately.
Well, with what you're doing, my friend, you're getting national attention. And I believe that if anybody can help make a change, it's you. And anything we can do to help, we're going to do. We have to cut now, but I want to thank you for coming. I also want you to know that I love you.
I love you
You're
too.
my brother.
I thank you.
And you are clearly, definitely one of my heroes.
Well, today is October the 22nd, and thank you for that. I just want you to know that myself and Matt Capilotto, Michael Gray, who's a
Right.
genius, and he has the numbers on these opioid deaths, and we can prove our numbers with stats. We've gathered 25 different groups of parents who head .orgs and foundations who want to do the same. They're on the same path as we are. When I first got into this fight, I just noticed that all these .orgs, it's like a dog chasing its tail. They were all
Right.
doing their own thing, and they didn't have like concentrated energy on trying to get this deemed a weapon of mass destruction. So I'm flying out to Ohio this Sunday. On Monday morning, I'm meeting with these 25 parents. We're doing a roundtable, and later that afternoon, Drug Czar James O'Connor will be visiting us as well. So we're getting attention. We're starting to
Yes.
get people's attention.
Yes, you are.
But again, all parents who are out there, I'm not trying to scare you. I am not trying to. I'm not trying to scare you so bad that you think that the world is coming apart. For me, my world came apart when I lost my son. You know,
Yeah.
my world came apart.
Yeah.
And if I can avoid one more death to this insidious poison that should be a weapon of mass destruction, then it needs to be done. You need to talk to your children. You need to monitor their Snapchat and social media. And you need to tell them that this isn't the 70s or the 80s or the 90s when you grew up.
It's different.
This is different.
Totally different.
It's
I wanna-
totally
I
different.
wanna
This
tell you-
fentanyl is everywhere. And on top of that, it is now for those recreational drug users who like to snort some coke from time and again.
It's cut there too.
It's cocaine, and not only that, marijuana that is not. I've heard cases of people dying of marijuana. Drug smugglers have actually pressed baby aspirins, and they look exactly like the same thing, and they're pure methamphetamine. And
That's how they get it.
In North Carolina, it killed a 3-year-old child last week. So, eyes open. You have to be alert. And I just want to thank Cary. I want to thank you as well. I forgot your name. Bill.
Veronica.
Veronica. I want to thank you guys for having me at the Signal.
Yes.
I'd like to thank you for all your support and all your love. And Cary, you knew who Daniel was, right? So we just got to get this ball over the touchdown line.
And we're gonna special thanks for coming here. I love you so much, as you
I
know.
love you too, man.
Glad to be involved in this show, and special thanks to the Signal and Veronica. Thanks for being here. And
No
before
problem.
I'm gonna give you a hug, and we're done.